Vishnu Vati Radhe Devi Satya Vachari Namo Namaha. Jai Tulsi Maharani Jai. We offer our most respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who just like desired trees, and fulfill the desires of their mind, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls.
It should be text 21 also.
Which text is it?
21. I'm going to do 21 through 25, but this is 22 on the board.
It's 21 is today.
Yeah. Because we have special classes on Thursday and Friday.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go through 25. Oh, Krishna. Sorry. Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Baba Girivardhari Gopi Jana Baba Girivardhari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari
Yasodanandana Braja Janarandana Yamuna Chiramanachari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Asatara Satyashri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Mathura Dhama Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dhama Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dhama Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Jamuna Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskachade Shatarane Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Bitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Bitam Scha Panchakalpa Chubhischa Kripa Sindhaviyabhata Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namah Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya August 9th, 2026 in New Goloka, Hillsborough, North Carolina. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10. Chapter 76 about the battle with Shalva, and we're going to be reading text 21 through 25. So text 21. Bahurupai karupam tad Drisyate na tradisyate Maya mayam maya kritam Durbibhavyam parayarabhut. So we have a lot of dristyas and mayas in this verse. Okay, please chant. Bahurupaika rupam tad Drisyate na tradisyate Maya kritam Durivabhyam parayaradbhut Bahurupaika rupam tad Drisyate na tradisyate Maya 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 kritam Durbibhavyam parayaradbhut Bahurupaika rupam tad Drisyate na tradisyate Hayadbhut Bahurupaika rupam tad Drisyate na tradisyate Maya mayam maya kritam Durvibhavyam parayaradbhut Bahurupaika rupam tad. Drishyate natra drishyate. Maya mayam maya kritam. Durvibhabhyam parayar adbhut. So it has many forms and one forms. You can see it, you can't see it. And it's illusions made by the master of illusions, Maya Dhanava. Synonyms: Bahu, with many. Rupa, forms. Eka, with one. Rupam, form. Tat, that. Soba, airship. Drishyate, is seen. Na, not. Cha, and. Drishyate, is seen. Maya mayam, magical. Maya, by Maya Dhanava. Kritam, made. Durvibhabhyam, impossible to find. Parai, by the enemy, the Yadavas. Adbhut, it became. So we're about to go into a description of this airship by Shalva, made by Maya Dhanava. Our late God brother Sadaputa Prabhu, in his book Alien Identities, where he talks about empirical evidence for these kind of stories from the Bhagavatam. And he talks about how that many people seeing unidentified flying objects, and there's thousands of such persons who testify to it. And Sadaputa makes the point that if we neglect all these testimonies, if we put aside all these testimonies, we'd have to put aside all human testimonies. And they will often describe airships that do this kind of thing, one form, many forms. You see it, you can't see it, it's here, it's there. So this was often the description of such vehicles. So the BBT translation: at one moment, the magic airship built by Maya Dhanava appeared in many identical forms, and the next moment it was again only one. Sometimes it was visible, and sometimes not. Thus Shalva's opponents could never be sure where it was. Of course, our modern military also is hoping they can make vehicles like this. Right? Haven't quite gotten to this level. There's no BBT purport. Srila Sanatana Goswami says, out of fear of Pradyumna, the vehicle, because remember we were talking about the prowess of Pradyumna, and even the enemies were appreciative. So out of fear of Pradyumna, the vehicle became invisible and unsteady in form. This is described in 2 verses, 21 to 22. It manifested many colors or forms, but was one form. Or it displayed many forms and then one form. This ship was constructed by Maya, not by illusion, although it produced illusions. The Yadus, Parai, could not determine its location. And Srila Jiva Goswami says pretty much the same thing. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in one form or many forms, the Soba aircraft was sometimes visible and sometimes not. So going on to text 22. From one moment to the next, the Soba airship appeared on the earth, in the sky, on a mountain peak, or in the water. So you'd see it here, and then 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 you'd see it here, without seeing how it got from one place to another. Like a whirling, flaming baton, it never remained in any one place. So Srila Sanatana Goswami, Srila Jiva Goswami says sometimes it appeared on the top of Raivataka mountain. So a little side note here, Raivataka mountain is where what Leela took place? I don't think so. You know, it might be, but I'm not sure. But I'm thinking of one thing. Now I got to go look that up when I go back to my room. There was somebody dancing at Raivataka mountain. Balaram. Balaram was dancing with some young women. And I remember when I spoke on that verse and I was saying it was gopis, and Maharaj was telling me it wasn't the gopis. And I realized the reason I thought that it was is that in the summary, in the BBT book, in the summary, it says it was the gopis. So that's why I thought that. But it couldn't have been the gopis because it was by Dwarka at Raivataka mountain. So that summary is mistaken. Okay, so then text 23. Wherever Shalva would appear with the Shobha ship and his army, there the Yadu commanders would shoot their arrows. So it's going there, they shoot, they go there, it shoots, they go there, it shoots. Srila Sanatana Goswami says, when it would seem to be near or was inferred to be present, the Yadu warriors would shoot. And Srila Jiva Goswami says, wherever they saw it, they would shoot. 24, Shalva became bewildered so he was trying to bewilder everyone else with this magical ship, but Shalva became bewildered upon seeing his army, an aerial city, thus harassed by his enemies' arrows, which struck like fire and the sun and were as intolerable as snake venom. So here we have actually an aerial city called Pura, an aerial city. Who else made an aerial city in the Bhagavatam? Kardama Muni made an aerial city, and he was so astonished by his own powers after he made it. He's like, whoa, I didn't know I could do that. We also have Tripura, the demon Tripura, who created aerial cities. And Sadaputra Prabhu also refers to this phenomenon, that people seeing UFOs will talk about seeing, what do they call it? The what? The mothership, right? Some big flying city. When I was a little kid, I used to watch this show called Star Trek, and it was like a flying city, wasn't it? Any of you who were watched that way back in the day. So they had everything there in this starship. So there actually have been aerial, and probably still are, aerial cities. So BBT purport, this is to text 24. Srila Sridhar Swami explains that the arrows of the Yadu commanders burned like fire, struck simultaneously from all sides like the sun's rays, and like snake venom were lethal by a single touch. That's quite amazing weapons they had. I mean, we also read about these incredible weapons that existed in former times. Srila Sanatana Goswami's commentary to text 24, the arrows seemed to touch everything at once, like rays of the sun. Srila Jiva Goswami's commentary, the arrows were like fire because they burned like fire. They were like the sun because they heated everything, like the sun's rays. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, both the flying city of Shobha and the troops of Shalva were severely afflicted by the Yadu's arrows, which burned like fire, struck simultaneously from all sides like the sun rays, and like snake venom were lethal by a single touch. The Shalva became bewildered. We have an often repeating theme of when demons try to bewilder the devotees, they themselves become bewildered. Okay, the next verse, text 25, which is what I'm going to end with. Because the heroes of the Vrishni clan were eager for victory in this world and the next, they did not abandon their assigned post on the battlefield, even though the downpour of weapons hurled by Shalva's commanders tormented them. So we had, not only was Shalva being harassed, the Yadus were also being harassed, but they didn't run away. And they didn't run away because they wanted victory now, and they wanted glory and victory in the future. BBT purport is just quoting Krishna book, and I'm going to read the whole section from Krishna book in a moment. So I'm not going to read that. Sanatana Goswami's commentary on text 25. The Yadus won victory in this life and the next. They acted according to Kshatriya codes with desire for fame in order to instruct Kshatriya Dharma and the Dharma of fame. Or they desired to control the upper and lower worlds by spreading their fame in order to benefit the universe. Okay, so I'm going to read this whole section from Krishna book now that covers verses 21 to 25. This is from Krishna book. But still the airplane occupied by Shalva was very mysterious. It was so extraordinary that sometimes many airplanes would appear to be in the sky, and sometimes there were apparently none. Sometimes the plane was visible and sometimes not visible, and the warriors of the Yadu dynasty were puzzled about the whereabouts of the peculiar airplane. Sometimes they would see the airplane on the ground, sometimes flying in the sky, sometimes resting on the peak of a hill, and sometimes floating on the water. The wonderful airplane flew in the sky like a whirling firebrand. So this reminds me of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he would whirl a stick like a firebrand, and he told Advaitacharya, I'll know you're really a cowherd boy if you can whirl a stick like this. It was not steady even for a moment, but despite the mysterious maneuvering of the airplane, The commanders and soldiers of the Yadu dynasty would immediately rush toward Shalva wherever he was present with his airplane and soldiers. The arrows released by the dynasty of the Yadus were as brilliant as the sun and as dangerous as the tongues of serpents. All the soldiers fighting on behalf of Shalva soon became distressed by the incessant release of arrows upon them by the heroes of the Yadu dynasty, and Shalva himself became unconscious from the attack of these arrows. The soldiers fighting on behalf of Shalva were also very strong, and the release of their arrows also harassed the heroes of the Yadu dynasty. But still, the Yadus were so strong and determined that they did not move from their strategic positions. The heroes of the Yadu dynasty were determined either to die on the battlefield or to gain victory. They were confident that if they died in the fighting, they would attain a heavenly planet, and if they came out victorious, they would enjoy the world. Similar verse in the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Krishna says, if you win here, you'll enjoy the earth, and if you die in the battle, you go to heaven. So, most people like to hear about fights between good and evil, isn't it? Big business. There's a big business of entertainment, both of fictional and non-fictional stories of battles between good and evil. Probably $1 trillion business. And it's especially very good business when the good people win. Nobody likes to be entertained by stories of where evil comes out victorious, so where the good win in the end. And we also like to hear about the good winning when it's difficult. You know, when they have to struggle, when there's some seemingly impossible obstacles. However, most of us would not want to be the ones fighting, isn't it? Right? People want to be entertained by these things, either real stories about actual battles or fictional stories, and we're like, yeah, you know, and we maybe identify with the characters fighting for the good. But if someone said, hey, would you like to be out there fighting these mysterious illusory beings and being overwhelmed by arrows, and, you know, would you stand your ground? and no matter what was happening, and we're like, probably not. And yet the Yadus had this kind of enthusiasm that they wanted to fight like this. So most reasonable people, the majority of reasonable people, want to do something meaningful in this world. Yes? It's one of the prime needs. I don't know, I was unfortunately out of town when Maharaj was teaching with Sri Radhika nonviolent communication. But that's one of the needs, isn't it? Meaning? Purpose? To do something that has meaning. Nobody wants to feel useless. Right? One of the problems, you know, as I get older, I read things about old age and retirement. And one of the problems with retirement for many people is they start to feel useless. They think nobody cares about me anymore. I don't have anything to contribute anymore. Huh? But most people also want to prepare for the next world. The prime pull of religion in the world is to provide ultimate meaning in this life and after death. That what I do will have some meaning after death. But different types of people are enlivened by different kinds of meaning. Different types of people want to do different things. I mean, even if they're all religiously inclined, what they want to do for the Lord is going to be different. Of course, then there's a general meaning for everybody. So that we all need meaning in our life. So there was a famous researcher, Daniel Pink. He wrote this book called Drive, and he analyzes motivation in 3 parts. Hertzberg, who I based my own doctoral dissertation on, had 4 parts. But anyway, Pink has 3. He talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That it has to do with me, my identity, that I can master it, and that there's some meaning behind it. But this life is also very, very short, yes? I was talking with my great-grandsons yesterday about time, because whenever I drive them someplace, they like to look at the time on the screen of the car. You know, how many more minutes till we get home, Gran, you know? and he's saying, 29 minutes. I said, yeah, it's about a half an hour. He said, that's not a very long time. And I said, you know, when you're young, 1 year is a very long time. I said, when you're my age, you know, 1 week is like a moment. It's just passing. like that. Life is very, very short. So we also want to have something meaningful after death. We all have a sense, right? Krishna says, Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. We all have a sense that we're eternal. Like Maharaj Yudhisthira said, the most wonderful thing is people think that they're never going to die. Why do we think that? If we were just material beings and this world was all that there is, none of us would have some sense or longing for eternality. So people want to have something after death. I mean, sometimes I personally think it's really silly that people want after death for their name to be in a history book or their statue up in a park. Like, how does that provide meaning? Like, maybe there's a statue of me from a previous life in a park somewhere. Why would I even care? I wouldn't even identify with it. But people might think of meaning after death as, well, what I'm doing in this life will go on after I die. You know, I'm going to start some project, I'm going to start something for the benefit of humanity, and it's going to go on. And of course, we have this kind of emphasis in the Shastra, the concept of succession, right? That the kings of the Bhagavatam, they're really anxious to have an heir so that things will go on in their absence. And of course, Srila Prabhupada was very interested in that, which very much differentiates ISKCON from many religious movements that start up that are more like personality cults. We're going to be celebrating today the incorporation of ISKCON. And we note, many of us note, that Prabhupada didn't have the society known by himself, but by Krishna. That Srila Prabhupada was not, and he wanted it that way. He wanted Krishna to be the center. He wanted the society to go on in his absence. But there's also a way of thinking after death personally. What will happen to me after I die? How will my deeds in this life go on to give me meaning in another existence? Now, many social scientists claim that taking up religion is irrational. Why would any rational person take up religion? But it's actually very rational if one thinks that by doing that, I'm going to have more meaning in this life, and I have a good chance of having meaning in the next life. Actually, religion is much more logical than irreligion in that respect. But there's individual differences. I mean, the Yadus here on the battlefield are finding meaning in fighting this mysterious warship that's going to give them meaning in this life and the next. And as Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas so nicely explain, they're doing this because they have the mentality of a kshatriya. They have the mentality of a kshatriya. So Srila Prabhupada wanted to have a cultural revolution, cultural conquest. What is Vedic culture that Srila Prabhupada wanted us to spread all over the world? What do we mean by Vedic culture? One word. Varnashram. Vedic culture is varnashram. Vedic culture isn't a particular way of dressing or particular types of food, it's varnashram. And the concept of varnashram is that there are 4 categories of dharma. Dharma is what's authentically meaningful for an individual person. That's what we mean by dharma. Dharma is the intrinsic nature of something. Like the dharma of water is liquidity. The dharma of sugar is sweetness. So there's a general dharma for everyone, which we'll look at in a moment. But then there's also individual dharma. So individual dharma is according to varna and ashram. And it's different. It's different. So what's dharma for the brahmana? What's dharma for the brahmana is not running out on the battlefield. And when Dronacharya did that, he was chastised by the demigods. You shouldn't be out here fighting. You can teach fighting, but you shouldn't be out here fighting. It's a violation of your dharma, and it creates an unfair situation on the battlefield because the brahmanas had access to more subtle and powerful weapons than the kshatriyas did. We see this in the fight between Vishvamrita and Vasista, that you don't belong here, you're in the wrong place. So what is the dharma for the brahmana? First of all, it's one of being satisfied. The brahmana has to be satisfied with mental, intellectual, priestly type of work so that they cannot be induced by money or fame or anything of that sort to distort the truth. The Brahmana of the Dharma is an extreme kind of detachment. I usually compare it to a sports commentator. They're watching the game, but they're not playing it. They're sitting above the game as a commentator. And we find Brahmanas, they'll have their own little society in Vedic times out in the forest, that they're not even interacting with society at large. And that Dharma is a really extreme detachment. And of course, honesty, that they're willing to speak straightforward truth, even if people don't appreciate it. They're willing to say, hey, the status quo is not good. They're willing to challenge the status quo. They're willing to speak truth to power. They're willing to go to jail or be persecuted or tortured in order to speak truth to power and in order to speak truth to people in general. And that's the Dharma of a Brahmana. That's their food. That's where they feel energized. The Kshatriyas, their Dharma is they're energized by crisis. Now, Brahmanas, Vaishyas, and Shudras may be able to be calm and collected in a crisis, but afterwards they're like, oh man, I can't believe I had to deal with conflict and crisis. I wish somebody else would deal with it. Whereas the Kshatriyas, what does Krishna says? Happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly kingdom. And that's exactly how the Yadus are feeling in today's verses. Wow, we get an opportunity to fight, even though they're being rained upon by all these mystical weapons of Shalva. They're being tormented, they're being harassed, they're energized by that. If we think about like Kshatriya occupations, police officers, there's some shooting going on in a building, and everybody else runs out of the building, and what do? They run into the building to confront the criminal. Or firefighters, everyone else is running out of the fire. They're running into the fire. Arjuna's son, Abhimanyu. So Manyu means danger, and Abhi means toward. People who run toward danger. So there's one devotee I know who works in not in this country, but he works in counterterrorism. And he says his greatest joy is when they can bang down a door and arrest the bad guys. And his wife, who's not a Kshatriya by mentality, she gets all upset at these kinds of things. She says, you should stay safely in the car. It's interesting, the Yadus, they either want to die or win. Prabhupada talking about the Kshatriya mentality, he talks about a woman. Just by the way, there are women in all four Varnas, not only men, because you're supposed to have marriages between people of the same Varna, and you can't do that if there aren't women in all four Varnas. So anyway, Prabhupada talks about Kshatriyas, he talks about a woman. He talks about this queen where her husband's off fighting a battle, and he comes to the gate of the palace, and the guards run up to the queen. Your husband is here, your husband is here. And she says, oh, he must have won the battle. And they go back and ask him, no, I didn't win, I lost. They tell the queen, your husband lost. She said, oh, then you must bring him in right away. He must be like gravely injured. And they go back and, are you injured? He says, no, I'm fine. They go up, tell the queen, your husband's fine. She said, don't let him in, he's an imposter. And Prabhupada says, then they go back and tell the king this, and he understands, oh, oops. And he goes back to the battle, and he fights like this. So the Kshatriyas also have an expansive mentality, not a satisfied mentality. They're expansive. They want to protect more people in more ways. And also, Prabhupada writes in the 18th chapter, they're not always honest. Kshatriyas have to be diplomatic. In fact, one of the occupations for Kshatriya is a diplomat. They like being diplomatic and negotiating, and then we have some Kshatriya occupations where people really have to lie a lot, like if you're a spy. Right? If you're a spy, everything you're doing is a lie. We have many examples in the Shastra of spying. And also like undercover police officers, they have to lie. So a Brahmana would be very uncomfortable in such a situation. And then looking at the Dharma of a Vaishya. So the 11th canto says, the Vaishyas are never satisfied. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, in commenting on this verse, said that the Vaishyas are always thirsty. They have to be expensive, because the Vaishya isn't just growing, tomatoes for their family. They're growing tomatoes for the village. They're growing tomatoes for the society. They don't just have one milk cow for their, wife and kids. They have, how many cows did Nanda Maharaj? 900,000? That's a lot. Now, they're expensive. They want to bring wealth to all of society. And they're also, as Prabhupada writes in the 18th chapter, and he says many times, they also are not totally honest. Right? They'll say, you're my friend, I'm not making any profit off of you. Don't worry, no profit. One devotee businessman who prints my books, and he always says, I'm giving you at cost. And like, yeah, right. I said, no, you're not. He said, no, really, I am. I said, no, you're not. And so that also is there, right? And what the Dharma for the Vaishyas is that I'm going to create sustainable, regenerative wealth for society. I'm going to keep the business going. I'm going to keep the agriculture going. I'm going to do it for the earth. And then you have the Dharma for the Shudras, what actually enthuses the Shudras. So they are satisfied. The Shudras are satisfied, Prabhupada will often say, if they can get a comfortable home and nice food and nice clothing, a loving environment, they're satisfied. Somebody with a Shudra mentality, if you say, hey, if you work 80 hours a week, you could become rich. They go, I don't want to become rich by working 80 hours a week. If they won the lottery, they might be happy, but they're not going to work hard for more money. And the Bhagavatam also said the Shudras are honest. Right? When we go to get our car repaired, we expect the repairman to tell us honestly what's actually wrong and not wrong with our car. And when you get work done by a Shudra, they'll tell you, this is how much I paid for the pipe, and this is how much I paid for the labor. Whereas if you go into a business, they don't tell you how much they paid for the pipe. And the essence of the Shudra Dharma, what really enlivens the Shudra, is pleasing the customer or the client. So I always give this example, the artist who paints a picture that they'll never see again. They paint a picture, it hangs in someone else's house. And a lot of us might want to paint pictures for a hobby, but to do that for others. You cook food that you never eat. You just serve the food to others. And that's your satisfaction. And Prabhupada writes in the 3rd canto about this service mentality of the Shudras, which is very close to bhakti, where our happiness is the happiness of God and the Guru and the devotee. Yes? And Prabhupada is glorifying this service attitude. And of course, the Shudras are the only Varna that are at the lotus feet of the Lord, where one finds all safety and protection. But the point is, we're all enlivened by different things. A Brahmin is not going to be enlivened by Shudra work, and a Vaishya is not going to be enlivened by Brahmana work, and a Kshatriya is not going to be enlivened by Brahmana. We're all enlivened by different things, just like we all enjoy different types of food. Yes, Prabhupada talks about this is what individuality is. Of course, this individuality of the Varnas is only in one life, and only according to what Prabhupada calls our psychophysical nature. In various lives, we may be in different Varnas and so forth. But then there's also, of course, the meaningfulness of the soul. And that applies to anyone. Whatever your age, your gender, your Varna, your ashram, your IQ level, your EQ level, whatever differences it may be, your race, your ethnicity, whatever. There's something that's meaningful for everyone. There's some Sanatan Dharma that gives our life meaning now and forever. One is to be selfless, to be giving rather than taking. Like Krishna says, everyone should perform charity. That we're all more enlivened by service. That our work, that whatever we do should have real value for others. And it should be honest work. That whatever we're given to take care of in this world, whether it's a family, whether it's society, whether just a little room, we should actually take care of it for Krishna's pleasure and not try to exploit it. And we should have everything connected with Krishna. This morning I was hearing Prabhupada talking about yoga, and he was saying yoga is you add Krishna. It means to add, it means to link. What really gives us meaning ultimately is that we're linked with Krishna. And if we're not linked with Krishna, then everything we do to find meaning in this world, Shama Eva Hi Kevalam, it's all useless. Ashradaya hutam tatam, tapas tatam kritam chayat, asad ichuchite partat, nachitad pretino iha. You may do something glorious in this world, you may go to a higher planet after death, but it's all like sand that runs through your fingers. It really doesn't have any ultimate meaning. So we want to connect with Krishna. And this means every day that we have a distinct time. This is when I'm going to do my spiritual practice. I'm going to absorb myself in studying and hearing and worshiping the deity and chanting the holy name. It means I'm engaging in yajna, like the Sankirtan yajna, like book distribution yajna. And then in every moment, right, nicely in Bhagavad Gita 4:24, that everything, the person offering, what they're offering, the sacrifice, everything should become transcendental. I should see Krishna everywhere. I should connect with him everywhere. What does Prabhupada say at the end of Bhagavad Gita? One should live life with a thrill, not just once, but at every moment. At least we should be aspiring for that. How can I have this thrill of connection with Krishna at every moment? That's all the positive. And the negative way, we're only going to find meaning if we get above the modes of material nature. As long as we're being kicked around by the modes of material nature, our life is not going to be very meaningful. And our destination is not going to be very good. So something I find very inspiring is where Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 3:10, he says, I provided this yajna for two things. Anybody know the two things Krishna says I provided yajna for? Bhagavad Gita 3:10. Anybody know? For living happily and attaining liberation. Both. So a spiritual system should provide for both. Living happily means varnashram connected with Krishna, Daivi varnashram. And attaining liberation means I go above the modes of nature and I actually attain prema for the Lord. I actually attain love for the Lord. And it's so wonderful that our Vedic system provides not only a transcendent philosophy, but also a culture and socio-economic system. We're very holistic. We're not just absorbed in this world, and we're not just absorbed beyond the world. We see everything holistically and combined, as these Yadus are doing, fighting Shalva's mysterious airship. So questions, comments, additions, subtractions, chastisements? Maharaj, anything you want to add or say? Anybody else?
Just wanted to say about diplomacy you're talking about. Diplomacy, Chanakya Pandit, but he knows the greatest diplomat. Of course, Krishna is the best diplomat.
Well, Chanakya Pandit was a Brahmana who advised Kshatriyas. So he was advising the Kshatriyas on diplomacy, but he himself didn't practice diplomacy.
That is why he was smart. So let other people do take the blame, but the blame behind it.
He personally didn't practice diplomacy. Yeah. And one time when the king wouldn't take his advice, he said, then I'm just leaving. Yeah. Yes, Prabhu? Are there mixed varnas? By birth, yes. By temperament, no. Well, I could, but I think I have 1 minute on my watch and no minutes on there. Because the dharmas are mutually exclusive, like how are you going to be both satisfied and expansive? You'd be at a war within yourself. So Shastra only gives 4 varnas. It doesn't give 16, it doesn't give 7, it doesn't get, only 4, there's consistently 4. There's some talk about mixed caste, but that's by birth. That's when you're looking at birth, not at temperament. When people think they may be mixed, usually they're in one varna assisting another, like Chanakya Pandit assisting the Kshatriyas, or you have certain Shudras who really want to assist the Brahmanas, or certain Shudras who really want to assist the Vaishyas. Certain Kshatriyas really like to assist the Vaishyas, like you have, different ministries in the government that deal with different things. So some Kshatriyas really want to help the Shudras, some Brahmanas really want to help the Shudras. So when a person seems to have a proclivity like that, either they're confused, or it's one varna assisting another. But in doing now hundreds of consultations for this, I've never seen anybody who was genuinely mixed And if there were, then Krishna wouldn't said, and all the Shastras wouldn't say 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. Anything good here is from Srila Prabhupada. Any mistake here is mine. Please take the good and ignore the mistakes. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
No sound. Haribol. Okay. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Puttalai Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Samani Namaste Saraswati Deve Morvani Negi Sesha Shunyavati Masjati Satarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jitwaita Ganana Shiva Sari Gaurvata Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jidvaita Shiva Sadi Gaurvata Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jidvaita Shiva Sati Gaurvata Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Acharya Sadashi Shimad Divine Grace Alaya Chanana Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharashila Prabhupada ISKCON Founder Acharya Prabhupada Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Acharya
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Om Ganesh Shri Guru Gauranga Shri
Jai. So just to let everyone know that today's my husband's birthday. Drishna Das's birthday.
On the ground. Harinam Sankirtan at 11:30 today. Please come to Weaver Street Market. The weather's going to be good. It's going to be hot, but it's summertime. So please come, 11:30 today. Chaita Darpanam Arjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kairavya Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pradipanam Purnamrita Swaranam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapitani Itasmaranena Kala Hitandrishita Bhaktipa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaivam, love the birds. Raga Trinadapi Sunichena Tororapi Suhishuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagadishakamai Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare Bhavatad Bhaktir Hoitaki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Gribhayata Vabada Pankaja Stita Duli Sajashimva Chintaya Nayanam Gadashu Daraya Varanam Gad Gadaridaya Gira Pulakarnishitam Vapukada Tava Namagrahane Bhavishyati Yugayatam Namishena Chakshusha Ravashayatam Shunayatam Jagatsarvam Govindam Virahename Ashlishava Padamritam Anastumam Adarshanam Marmahatakarotuva Yatatadava Vidadatulam Patomat Prananatastusa Eva Napara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, a repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are anxious. Oh, my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benedictions to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you've invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh, my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate